Okay.
Who do we have there?
Why, hello there, friends!
Hello there.
It's Emma here, the Bookish Princess. Here's my brother, Athos. Today, we are going to be discussing the book Dune, which is by Frank Herbert. It's actually a series of books. Athos has finally read the first one.
Only the first one.
Just the first one. I read the sequels, a couple of them, 3 of them, for the first time last year. But I can't wait to hear Athos's thoughts on Dune.
Cogitations.
Not Doom. Dune.
Dune.
Like sand dunes.
That's the point.
That's the whole point.
There it is.
I was just saying to Athos, it's too bad the official Dune trailer hasn't come out, because they are doing a new adaptation, which I think they've already filmed it, because there are some like photos out.
Screenshots, yeah.
But the trailer isn't here yet, sadly. The guy from The New Little Women, Laurie, I don't think you ever saw The New Little Women, did you? But he is Paul Atreides, and I think Poe Dameron is in it too.
What?
And is possibly
As
an evil
himself?
guy?
As Poe Dameron.
Special
Not the
cameo.
actors.
So, tell us about how Dune struck you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it overall. Quality stuff. Keep in mind that any of my criticisms might be, they might be answered by the sequel, which I haven't read. But yeah, overall, I very much enjoyed it.
Should we give them a quick summary?
You're right, yeah, why not give them spoilers.
Spoilers ahead. You mentioned you liked the premise that it starts with, because the Atreides family has been quasi-exiled, sort of. There's this whole sort of history, like literally reaching back eons to behind the story of Dune, that like you're given glimpses of here and there, but you're never really fully, like it's never fully explained who are the Ben Gesserit, like who's the mining guild, like who are all these different power players, because obviously there's a ton of sort of
intergalactic politics.
Exactly. A game of chess. Or France, queen, less. The House of Atreides has just lost their homeland and been kind of forced to move to this planet, Dune. And Dune it's such a weird planet, because this mysterious spice that makes your eyes blue when you eat too much of it, is concentrated on Dune. And people...
It's a hyper valuable resource. Exactly. Incredibly valuable. Like that. Doesn't the Space Guild or whatever that's called, they need that to operate their interspace highways. They need it, so it's an incredibly valuable resource. But at the same time, nobody really wants to live on Dune. It's a gross desert planet. Like, I could see the appeal of owning it, but you don't want to live on it. But the
in an actual game of chess or one of those military strategy games, Dune would be one of those places where it's like high risk, high reward. You have to live in the middle of sandstorms on a barren desert, but if you can get access to this spice, like you say, the transportation, the space transportation, people use the spice because it grants them kind of a vision into the future. Like taking the spice, they never like fully explain exactly what it does to you, but it basically seems to heighten your awareness and your perceptions. I think it kind of makes you live longer, but
all sorts of.
But it can give you like visions of the future, and obviously in this universe it's not like Star Wars or Star Trek where like they can calculate the jump to warp speed. In this universe, the like pilots need to use the spice in order to see into the future, basically.
Yeah, I like that it was so vague, because it allowed you to interpret it however you wanted. I thought of it sort of as like it heightens your awareness to the point where you can consider every possible result of your actions, and then they're able to, do that to figure out where they can warp, because they can figure out no matter what they did, where they would end up. But it's obviously heightened to such a degree that it's, like they can consider everything, because if you could consider everything, then you could figure out the future. So, like, in a way, it's like almost not, like, I feel like at its surface it seems magical, but it almost gets like a pseudo-scientific, backing to it.
That is the weird thing. It is like it seems just magical, but then also they treat it like really seriously and scientifically because like it obviously gives them enough future perception to navigate space safely. But like they can't see every part of the future. It's not like
not
everyone
completely unlimited.
It's not like everyone who uses the spice can like truly unlock all of its potential, but there are seeds that one of the characters is going to be able to kind of unlock more potential of the spice. And like some of the like very hyper trained individuals can unlock more, like the Ben Gesserit. They're kind of this sort of not a race because don't they come from all different
Almost
races?
like a priestly
exactly. But then there's also the pilots who they have a stake in it because they are making space travel possible. There's the Emperor. He's nominally in charge, and then there are like the houses, and Atreides is one of the houses. So they've been forced to move to Dune, and their home planet, Caladan?
Caladan? I think maybe.
I'm pretty sure.
Something like that.
It was like lush and beautiful, and there was so much water everywhere. Whereas on Dune, water is this like extremely precious resource. And so like the ordinary people of Dune, when there is a palace that the House Atreides is able to move into, and there's like a greenhouse there, but like the greenhouse is seen by the people of the planet as almost sinful. Like that's a waste of water.
Debaucherous waste. Yeah, exactly. Just throwing the water away. Decadent. Creating that world, like in a believable way of like water is so precious, and everyone needs it to live, obviously. So it's like so carefully rationed. I thought that was very
really
effectively done throughout the whole book.
Took that to like extremes because so there's this still suit that the Fremen are kind of the native people of Dune, and they are very mysterious. They like live way out in the desert, not even in the cities, and like you don't really know much about them, especially to begin with. But they wear these still suits. I think other people wear still suits too, but like the Fremen have it down to a science, and like the still suit like reuses every piece of moisture that your body excretes. So like your sweat and other kinds of moisture, and like it's so gross.
So gross.
When you
recycles it into reusable, drinkable water because that's how precious it is.
Like you cannot give up even a bead of your sweat on this planet because that is how scarce water is. Yeah, there are so many different things in play because like there's the House Atreides, but there's Liet Kynes. Isn't he like a planetologist?
Yeah, he's the planetary ecologist.
Or does he die? Or
we meet him initially. He was sent there by the Emperor himself, and he kind of ends up going native and gets the blue eyes, which is that's what you get from using the spice. All the Fremen, because they live on this world where it's almost a funny dichotomy in that way because like water everywhere else. Everyone has water. That's not a big deal. But spice is the thing that everyone needs.
Around the galaxy.
Around the galaxy, exactly. Whereas on Dune, spice is everywhere.
The Fremen have plenty of it.
Indulge endlessly in spice.
They don't even really indulge. It's
You're right. It's in the air. You're right.
It's like potatoes in Ireland during the potato famine. It's like, that's the food
they don't even have a choice. Yeah, exactly. Like, they have to take it. It's infused in literally everything. Yeah. But then there's no water. So that's kind of funny, too, how the hyper valuable resource is so
a double-edged sword.
Dichotomy.
Liet Kynes, the planetologist, he has this dream, it turns out, of bringing water back to Dune, that we kind of hear pieces of. I thought the epigraphs, is that what you call them? The little quotes before a chapter begins. Like every single chapter in Dune had this little quote. And they were from all sorts of different books, none of which exist. Like,
all
Frank Herbert,
in-universe books.
Exactly, they're all in-universe books.
So cool.
And like sometimes you'll recognize the name of the author of the in-universe book, but at other times it's like maybe you haven't met that character in person
and maybe
yet.
you'll meet them later,
right?
Too, in the book.
And so it's just hilarious.
Yeah, it is really
it's like
cool
this in-universe book.
Yeah, they did such an incredible job of creating a whole enormous galaxy, which I think that like you were saying, where he leaves so many things vague, I think is to the benefit of the whole thing because it really lets you like it gives you more to think about, and it makes the whole thing more appreciable too. Whereas I'm sure if you just spelled things out, then you would kind of be like, oh,
yeah,
that's it. That's what it is.
There wouldn't
it
be
doesn't
as
seem
much
as expansive.
Scope for your imagination, and definitely the like uncertainty is like part of Dune. Like, I mean, because there's uncertainty because like House Atreides is kind of on the run. They've been forced to take possession of Dune, but like there's this sense that they are about to be like have a all-out attack. Like they've been kind of subtly attacked, but like they're expecting an actual attack from the Harkonnens. Those are their
ancient
enemies.
Rivalry, the Capulets to their Montagues.
Yeah, there we go. So there's like that sense of suspense, but there's a whole nother sense of suspense too of like the Bene Gesserit, because Paul Atreides is the son, so his father is the Duke, his mother is Jessica, and she is a Bene Gesserit. So she's had all this training. So she's passed on her special Bene Gesserit training to Paul. But like his father and like his father's aides and lieutenants have all passed on this like super advanced,
militaristic,
diplomatic skills, but also like fighting skills and hand-to-hand combat. And so Paul has like absorbed all these different kinds of training.
Aristocratic training, and then also but in fact both of them are kind of diplomatic, very much in a way, because the Bene Gesserit have their own diplomatic schemes that they're always pulling off.
The Bene Gesserit have the voice, which is like literally just mind control. So it's the Jedi voice is what it is. It's like they learn to put these inflections into their voice that like will make almost anyone do what they say. So
undeniable.
Paul's been trained in the voice. But like the Bene Gesserit aren't perfectly pleased with Jessica, Paul's mother, Jessica. There's a sense of threat from them as well because the Queen Mother comes, not the Queen Mother, what is she called? Reverend Mother of the Bene Gesserit comes to Dune to subject Paul to a test. The Gom Jabbar.
With a... Well,
dun dun dun.
So
should we tell you what it is? It sounds all freaky and
we're
scary.
spoiling everything.
I know, we are spoiling it. It's a box.
It's a box.
Just
it's
a box.
true.
You stick your hand in it. And you have to keep your hand in it. That's all.
While it causes excruciating pain, and then up to your neck is a needle held by the Reverend Mother, which is called the
Gom Jabbar.
Gom Jabbar, exactly.
You're right, so the Gom Jabbar isn't the box.
But I think it's still the test of the is the name for the whole thing. So you have to keep entirely still, or else you'll get jabbed in the neck and die from this evil poison.
So you can feel your hand burning up, or you can die from poison. So.
Exactly.
Although then Paul pulls his hand out and it's perfectly fine.
Exactly. So the whole thing is a
his
trick,
hand had like burned.
You're supposed to kind of release the pain in a way and let it. That's their whole kind of like their litany against fear thing.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death which brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to move over me and past me. And when the fear is gone, I will turn to see the path it has taken. Where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
There you go. That's exactly it. It's kind of a chant that they repeat.
Yes.
In any sort of dangerous or stressful.
Anytime they feel fear.
To focus their minds, you know? And I feel like
it's I will let this fear pass over me.
And it's a similar idea with this box too, because like you need the pain to pass. You need to transcend that excruciating pain, so you can just stand there through it and just exist. Only I will remain. So no, not the pain. Paul succeeds in the test. He doesn't get killed. And
is he the only man who's ever succeeded? Because the Bene Gesserit are all women. And there is this, like, again, we're not told all about it, but it's obviously this mysterious kind of legend of...
A prophecy. Hinted at. Yeah, that they don't tell us much.
Quasit Hezarach.
Something like that.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
However you pronounce it.
How would you pronounce it? So, of like, sort of a male who will be able to do things that the Bene Gesserit can do, but the Bene Gesserit are all women, and so far no man has been strong enough to join their ranks. Yeah, there's this like sense that Paul might be the chosen one.
So they all go to Dune.
His metachlorian count is real high.
Off the scales, exactly. Calling back to sort of medieval noble houses where you have like your court doctor, you have all these characters, and their court doctor ends up betraying them, and most of Paul's family, well, I guess he didn't have much of a family to begin with, but his dad gets killed. Him and his mother end up escaping. Exactly, and they end up eventually joining the Fremen out in the wilds.
It was interesting, like, for the kind of brief part of the book that we do get to be in that palace and hear about, like, as they're just starting to get used to Dune and learn its ways. It's like they first meet a couple Fremen in the palace.
Yeah.
Oh, you were mentioning
interestingly at the
too, like, we hear about the House Atreides and a little bit of their past and like the grandfather.
Yeah, there's I don't even know what the symbolism was. But I was telling you, I was like, what did that mean? There was a scene where the grandfather of Paul, of the Atreides family, he was killed while fighting a bull, I think is what it was.
Or a boar? Is it a boar or a bull?
I can't remember which one. So after whichever boar or bull killed him, they mounted its head on one side of the hallway with its horns still stained with his blood, the grandfather, and then they put the portrait of the grandfather on the other side of the hall. So they're just like staring at each other eternally, which I thought might be, I feel like there was some significance there. Maybe like the Atreides always stare down they stared down the Harkonnens when they came to kill them, because that's who ends up, the Doctor betrays them for the Harkonnens, who are that rival family who come in and do the killing.
Move in.
Exactly,
to take
yeah. So
possession of
staring down danger. I don't know quite what it meant, but I liked it. I thought it was a cool thing.
I'm sure it did have symbolism. Apparently, this didn't come out so very much in the first, but especially in the sequels that I read. I was reading then some works by the psychologist Jung. And I was thinking, this sounds a lot like Dune, and I Googled it, and Frank Herbert was hugely influenced by Jung. Like, a lot of the ideas Jung had of, like, if we develop ourselves to this level, we'll be able to unlock these things that previously we thought were magical, but actually are within our grasp. And Frank Herbert was like, okay, I'll imagine that.
I'll write a book
that sounds great. But I feel like you see that more and more in the sequels. See, apparently, I think there are like 7 sequels or something like that. There are a lot. Probably too many, like you were saying. It's the mystery, the sense of suspense, and like not, like there's a lot to be read between the lines. So when he puts in more lines, it kind of severs. You know what was apparently also a source of inspiration to Frank Herbert was in, I was going to say Oklahoma, not Oklahoma, Oregon, I think, is where Frank Herbert is from, out west. Apparently, there were all these dunes that were like encroaching on the local wildlife and like
kind of inspired
that were just like taking over, and so
ecosystem.
That kind of inspired him because like there is this sense that like the sand is almost, I mean, not quite alive, but inside the sand there are sandworms. Sandworms are very much alive. Sandworms are crazy. And yet the Fremen, so those sandworms are literally huge worms. Like
building-sized, enormous worms that tunnel through the sand. The spice comes from them. The precise mechanism, I don't think, is... I don't remember being precisely
in later books, they kind of...
But I like that it was vague.
Yeah,
like
it is
somehow
vague.
It comes from them.
But the Fremen know how to ride a sandworm. That's like one of your rites of passage. That was a fun description of when Paul had to hook his first sandworm and had to you
jump on.
Wait for it.
Paul and his mother end up joining the Fremen after escaping from their family. That was another thing I thought was really cool. Another comparison between the palace that they were in was, they were endlessly suspicious because there was this, that tension you were talking about, this feeling of an attack was coming soon.
You don't know where it's coming from, who's going to betray you.
Exactly, suspicious of everyone. Just they had these, they called them poison snoopers, or these devices made to look for deadly poisons that have been put in your food and everything, and those were of course over any place you would eat in the palace. They were everywhere.
And they had the personal shields.
Yeah, they had special radiating shields to...
And they were teaching...
stabs and guns.
Teaching Paul special ways to fight if you're fighting someone with a shield. If you stab like this, you can get through their shield. It's what?
So yeah, exactly. There's this this eternal feeling of you could be attacked at any moment and killed at any moment. So there's this extreme caution everywhere. But then it's funny that you transition to these desert caves that the Fremen live in, And I mean, they live in, this incredibly harsh environment where you can be killed by a giant sandworm, you can just die of thirst out there, you can just be baked by the sun and die. Like, incredibly dangerous and deadly by any metric. Yet, in those sand caves, they didn't have any poison snoopers. Like, in a lot of ways, it was comparatively safer out in the wilderness than it was in civilization, where you were liable to be murdered at any moment. Deadly wilderness was less deadly.
Yeah, I like those descriptions of the sietch, the communities of Fremen out there in the desert. Maybe that's part of the symbolism of the boar and or bear or bull. Who, maybe because obviously his enemies didn't get him, this wild boar, the forces of nature got him.
Animal.
A formidable but natural adversary got him, not the machinations of the evil heart. The
evil court, yeah. And that's essentially the end is essentially he returns to the city. The Harkonnens have now, in the absence of the Atreides, have taken over Dune as well. So they're all in the city. And there's a great battle by the end of it, after Paul essentially becomes the leader of the Fremen through all of his training, and they win.
They win.
Good. They win. The Harkonnens also have a kid who's about exactly Paul's age, and is
They also have a kid. He's like a young man who's like a deadly warrior and a playboy, but they also have a kid.
Was he like 15 at the beginning of the book? I don't know. He wasn't that old, But
yeah,
exactly. But yeah, the Harkonnen is
Paul is a teenager, although there's an incredible evolution because obviously he's going through a lot of stress.
He's in the desert for years too.
Yeah, but at the beginning he is just like the teenage son, and then at the end he's like the leader.
Yeah, there's essentially this character who I thought when he was first introduced in the second chapter, super early on, that this character seems to be built up to be kind of the foil to Paul, where he's about the same age, but he's from the evil rival family. He clearly is, very cutthroat and diabolical and not a good person at all. But then we kind of don't really see him again until the very end of the book, where he has a duel to the death with Paul. Which, somehow, to me, it felt like we should have seen more of him progressing through the book. In fact, we could have seen how he grew as a character, perhaps grew more evilly. like the rival in Pokemon, kind of.
I don't know if we're meant to see him as, an equal of Paul, like the way the boar is the equal of the grandfather.
You don't think it was quite that?
I don't think so. I mean, it's more like his uncle, the Duke, the main Harkonnen. He's super evil.
He's super evil. But then I would have thought that he was the equivalent to Paul's dad. But then I guess Paul grows into his dad's position, essentially.
Yeah. Whereas the other guy doesn't grow into that position. He kind of stays at the lower.
Well, you're right. Maybe that's kind of the point.
That's fine. The evil Duke kind of keeps him in submission. But there is this sense that, the good and evil aren't always as far off as you would think, because we already warned you there were spoilers. You know this too, right?
Yeah.
It turns out the evil Duke is Paul's grandfather on his other side. She's Jessica's father.
Is a Harkonnen.
Because the Ben Gesserit actually never know. I don't think they know either of their parents.
Yeah, I think they keep it a secret.
They keep it a secret. So Jessica didn't even know for the longest time. Yeah, the Ben Gesserit. It's they're really admirable in some ways, and they're really creepy in others. It's kind of crazy that this evil Duke, the Harkonnen Duke, is actually Paul's grandfather. That's
sort of Jungian too, of facing the shadow almost is I would say the duel to the death kind of with the Harkonnen kid. That's kind of Paul's shadow. Another character like the Harkonnen kid whose name I can't remember.
That's how forgettable he is.
Yeah, exactly. He barely shows up in the book. But somehow, the fact that the book essentially ends on a duel to the death with him and Paul somehow makes it seem like that should have been more meaningful. It would have been more meaningful if we had seen the evil kid more often.
And we should say the evil Duke was already killed by Paul's 4-year-old sister.
Sister or daughter?
Sisters! Jessica is actually expecting when the whole coup takes place and they have to flee to the diner. And Leah is born with crazy powers. See, we're already getting too long. We can't get into a discussion of Leah now because... But anyway, she's 4 years old and she stabs the Duke. So maybe that's partly why it was like Paul didn't get to kill the Duke, but Paul needed to have a big confrontation. So it was with kind of his foil, even though his foil never developed as much as he did because in part of the Duke.
Well, they're similar to how everyone has a court doctor. They also have a court assassin whose job is not only to kill other people, but to keep them safe as well. And
I love how, like, matter of factly, you have a doctor, a chef, a butler, have an assassin.
A spy master. But
this literally does sound like a board game, like, the more you think about it.
So the spy master for the Atreides is a nice enough guy. He's okay. Although his death ends up being abrupt later, because the Harkonnens initially have an assassin as well, who I think he has the spice eyes, if I remember correctly, and I think his name is DeVries or something. Yeah. But he seems incredibly evil. Like he's super plotting, wants. Like the top tier evil, like possibly more like psychotic and evil than even the Baron himself is, because the Baron seems afraid of him.
Calling him a Duke, he's a Baron. I'm so sorry about that.
But yeah, because the Baron even seems afraid of this guy. So incredibly psycho, evil, crazy character. But he similarly.
Oh.
So I was expecting he was going to be a major player in the whole book. But he ends up being killed relatively early on when the Harkonnens attack the...
during the coup.
Yeah, during the coup. The assassin, the super evil one, who... It seemed like he was going to be an interesting character, too, because he was addicted to the spice. He had the blue eyes, like his mind must have been going all wow, like it does. So, anyway, I thought they were going to do more with him. But no, the Duke, Paul's father, kills him right there. And in a way, I think it might have been to make Paul's father's death more meaningful, to establish a powerful, dangerous-looking character who then Paul's father takes him out. Like, who knows how the story might have gone differently if the Harkonnen assassin had survived. It literally is chess.
There are all these powerful pieces. You never know which one's going to be taken out. If you lose your queen, what can you do with your bishop?
The Harkonnens end up getting the Atreides assassin joins them. So if for nothing else but to get revenge against Jessica, who he thinks is the traitor, he joins the Harkonnens. Yeah. But at the end of the book, because the Harkonnens don't know Paul is leading the Fremen, they think Paul's been dead for years. But they know that the Fremen are attacking Muad'Dib. They know that the Fremen have this quasi-religious, powerful leader who is leading them. And that he's only introduced by his title, so they don't know who he is. But he comes to meet them, and the one-time Atreides assassin, now the Harkonnen assassin, is told to kill him when they meet. And upon realizing that it's Paul, it's not just some random Fremen, ends up killing himself with the poison needle he was equipped with, which kind of seems kind of dumb. Like, you could have lived and then served Paul. Like, why did you... I don't know why you needed to do that. That seemed kind of random, too. Apparently there's going to be a movie soon, exactly, like we were talking about before, so it's...
There's been a movie in the past. I don't think it was great.
Very good.
Yeah, exactly. Philosophical sci-fi literature. High sci-fi. Alright, guys, well, thank you so much for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts about Dune down in the comments.
Comment below. Join the discussion. Discourse with us. As you do. Thank you for joining us.
We'll talk to you guys again next time. Until then, I hope you have a magical day.
Magical day.